Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here at round four. I feel like we're in a boxing ring. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Um, Welcome back, A'HaRa. My name is Alisha Brashay from Cosmic Gateway. This is Frequency Jump episode 4. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole of some different topics that are relevant. Of course, we've covered so much so far, and there's still a ways to go with sharing personal experiences, themes that are coming up very ripe within the collective field, and perhaps talking about some of the things that people don't want to discuss or look at, or maybe not even have an awareness of, and to bring some of those things into light. So I'm so I'm so grateful to have you here to share and talk about some of these things. It's rare to find someone that you can go into those pockets and spaces. So much gratitude and thank you for being here in your presence, A'HaRa. So
Yeah, it's been amazing. So thank you too. I mean, I think there was divine intervention for sure that we were put together, especially this timing, because we started this series bang on the Pluto alignment with Aquarius. And yeah, it is very rare to find this. So I think it was definitely orchestrated.
I think there was some cosmic strings being pulled. So here we are.
Yep.
So we covered, and obviously, ultimately, we're trying to cover all the interwoven topics and threads that people may be going through, experiencing, or coming into the experience of in this kind of time frame period as we go through this frequency jump bandwidth, and the twists and turns that may arise in it. And ultimately, we are stepping into the vibration of the golden age. But what does that? It feels messy to actualize and stabilize because there are still a lot of unthreading that's happening in people's internal worlds and processes, as I've experienced over the last week or so. Um, and of course, that is then going to be reflected on the collective field. And you and I are quite passionate about a particular topic that we'll dive into shortly. And I feel like when we look at these things that need to come out of the darkness into the light to be witnessed, held, healed, exposed, transmuted, that lays a very fertile ground to then start to really create without the repetitious pattern that has been ingrained in this many cycles. So I've said many times, and I just want to preface this because this has been a dialogue that's been running in my head now for about 3 weeks, and I haven't said it out loud, but it's the golden age is closer than you think, is what keeps coming to me. I don't dive deeper into that. In terms of like time frames and da da da. I think we're actually witnessing and anchoring at that as we speak, or we have been for a while, but it's becoming a lot more accessible now to many people if they choose to. But I know that in terms of accessing such a high frequency, it does come with layers of potential hidden wounds, traumas, traumatic experiences, things that are perhaps not uncovered until you hit that point. Would you agree with that?
Understatement. Um, I feel like, first of all, like to frame the term golden age, because, like, what does that even mean? It just means working with the golden frequency that is beyond duality. That's how I sort of frame it, because a golden age can look like anything, but we know that it looks like unity instead of separation. Hence, it's beyond duality. That's a tall order in itself, given where humans are at and have been for a very long time, which is basically in a warring mentality.
Mm.
Way back from when I believe that humans were androgynous, or I call them unity gender, and we were split into man and woman. And so that in itself was a war. Like, it created a fight because it required an interception and a split. And so we've been in this split consciousness for so long, way back. to the point where we were actually in different bodies. You know, we created completely differently, we looked different, and we were, you know, unisex, if you like.
Mm.
Um, Hence, we would create by frequency. We would create other beings, children, whatever, by frequency, not through intercourse. And so I believe that it's a reawakening and an opening for those who remember that time to step into another pathway. And in that, we're creating our own construct. You know, we are creators of this construct, even though it's a bit of a hellish nightmare. Um, when you really get into it, you know, but we're creating a new pathway out of that. And I think that's so important right now, to be focusing our energies on what, when I say a new construct, I mean a new reality. What's the new reality we want to live in? How does it function? It's a complete quantum shift in terms of how we live day to day. Like I said, even at the physical level of what the bodies are going to evolve into. And that's why so many children right now are being born into it through what I call rainbow consciousness. And so they're rainbow children and they don't identify with gender. They're like, what is that? And so, of course, then the system hijacks that consciousness and goes, well, you still have to choose. So they go, oh, I'll choose a different gender, thinking that that's their salvation and that will fix things, but it doesn't, because it's still binary. It's still in duality of this or that. So I think it's really important to see that, like, we are creating the new golden age, weaving together all the different golden ages that have ever existed that we remember, or and then like kind of seeing what we can thread as the new tapestry for that now. So that's the new construct. But it's so much more than what it appears to people or what people think, I reckon, based on what's sort of out there, because it has to put us in a power position of being the creators of a new reality, not just creators of our reality. Like, I'm just keeping myself in a high vibration and that's enough, you know, like, no, this is like construct. Imagine you're constructing an entirely new civilization. How would you construct it? How does it function? What does it look like? How are the children reared? You know, what are how the villages operate, or whatever it looks like, you know? What's the new game? That's a long answer, sorry.
I love the way you spoke about we're weaving threads of all the different aspects of various golden ages, because I would agree with that. I think through my own personal experience of recovering so much soul memory in chunks, you know, like it comes through and there's this period of like, you know, 4 to 6 months where there's just constant recall and memory and, you know, recovery. And then it's like, then you got to integrate it. And there's a lot of unpacking trauma of that, because of the death of many civilizations. But if we can access the higher moments of what that looked like, we're constructing something that's very unique, that has, you know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and weaving it all together. And that's exactly how I see it, because I've had, you know, for many years taken into like futuristic dream space, what I believe is like an actual connection into the future or a prophetic dream. I don't think it was any way symbolic, and it's unlike anything I've seen from the past. It can have elements of it, but it's very, very different, and very beautiful. So I think one of the distinct things that I notice or recognize from that space is that there is no inverted or corruption in terms of like, just, you know, I think here we're in, just being here, we're pumped with frequencies from all over the place that create a real distorted perception. But even in the, I don't know about you, but even in the last few days, there has been a shift that I've noticed distinctively that feels like stepping into that more and more. And I know we go through pockets and elements of it, but it was so noticeable to me that it happened on an internal level of recalibration, and then experiencing the world in a different format is becoming a little bit more tangible as we speak. So,
Mhm. And I think this is the really fine line with the Aquarian energy that we're in now is we have to look at the shadow of Aquarius, which is emotional detachment. So there's this emphasis on over rationalizing things and being able to, but this is the spiritual bypassing that's going on, the whitewashing of what we're really in, that everything can be explained away at a high level. Of course it can, you know, but in this reality, in this matter, things matter.
mhm,
And if you can't feel what matters to you and you're not willing to stand, protect, and even fight for that if necessary, then you're not really here and you're not going to feel like you're part of creating this new reality. So that's
mhm,
why we ended the last video with get in your body, because that's your matter.
mhm.
And when you're in your matter, you know what matters to you and you will create that new pathway. It's a physical 3D pathway. It's not an idea. It's not a light energy. It's not bringing in codes. It's making matter. You have to
Great.
take the codes into matter, which means, like I said, constructing how a society might operate as an alternative to smart cities and AI and surveillance and all the stuff they're planning, right? So, yeah, I think that's really key is to go, what matters to you? And of course, why? Because it's about the path you've walked and what emerges out of you from that.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So, one of the biggest things that I feel needs to be cleared before we can really anchor anew, because we've talked a lot about these new children coming in, and I know more of this is coming to light. More people are having light conception experiences. I get a little overwhelmed with like awe because speaking about this like 8 years ago was such a out there topic, but now not that it's anyway mainstream, but at least it is in my circles, if you will. It's much more
Sure
widely
is.
spoken about or accepted. But I feel the one thing that I've said, especially starting in 2020, when there was like a lot more understanding of trafficking,
Mm.
um, the absolute atrocities that have been done to children and still being done to children on this planet that goes off world, is these children don't desire to be born into a world where that is still existing. Or maybe
Mm.
not even, I mean, like that's really ambitious, but still being hidden from plain sight.
Yes. Mm.
Maybe they will, come into a world where that is being recovered or healed, but not while it's deep pushed underground and not being truly recognized for the depth of what is actually occurring. Now, so many wonderful speakers talk about SRA, and, child trafficking, but to the depth and level that of what is actually occurring that has this off-world element to it. I have been privy to many, many private conversations that this is happening in our backyards. This is not just something that's happening over in that country or this country or, like, and that was shocking to me to uncover that and have people come to me sharing about the intensive, invasive procedures that have been done to them as little children up until certain ages. And I think that is what matters. That is a core element of what I'm incredibly passionate about because we need to heal as a society. Because I think that as people come into more memory of like who they are, what they are, there's still that a lot of people are coming into these type of memories too, which I think are the most hidden because either the psyche just wipes it as being so far out there that it has nowhere to place it, or there is technology that, you know, blocks it too. So that, there's part and parcel to that. And sorry, you were going to say something. So.
No, no, no. I was just thinking how this is a whole separate series is to excavate this topic. in terms of the things that are not really being spoken about. Because as we said before, we jumped on this call is, okay, there's a lot out there around trafficking now and satanic ritual abuse, and underground organizations peddling all of this. But what's not being said about that? Like it's so mainstream almost, or sensationalized now, that people are going to miss the point, and that's what they're trying to do. So what is the point? The point is, and like I said, this is a big topic, so we're just skimming the surface here, is that this simulation, or the controllers, or whatever you want to say, this construct knows that if you sabotage every new generation before a certain age, you've got everyone, you've got the entire population. And you can tell yourself whatever you like about your own ascension, or your own evolution, or your own light, or origins, or whatever. But while there are children under your feet being tortured, sabotaged, prostituted, whatever, no one on this plane is free. Not one single person. So that's my view. I know that sounds like a strong view, but I really do feel that if people don't understand how much children are being targeted and why they get targeted, all you have to do is disable their power at an early age, and that person, that child, as they grow into an adult, will never be able to rise into their full power. And even if they unlock certain things, you know, through years of therapy or healing or whatever their pathway is, while that's happening, the next generation is being undermined and intercepted and screwed. And it's all happening without our knowledge, without our awareness. So this goes way beyond what people know as sex trafficking. This is like through the military, through childcare centres, through just everyday people when they drop off their kids and they're out of sight, schools, like the safest places you can imagine for children. Certain children especially are targeted and taken. And that's, you know, that's been my story. I know, and you have your story with that as well. But I think that's really key, that people need to know that while this is happening, nothing's ever going to change here. We can tell ourselves anything, but it's not. Well, until the children are completely 100% safe. And no one can say that right now, because so much is happening beyond our view, and it is underground. And yes, there are tunnels, and yes, there are all sorts of laboratory experiments. This isn't just about sex and pedophilia, which is what's being peddled in the media. This is about the deliberate sabotaging of especially high frequency children and starseeds that come here. And like you say, why would the new starseeds want to come while this is still going on? Because they're just going to get intercepted as well, and the cycle continues.
Yeah. One image that has been shown to me repeatedly is that just incarnating, coming into this reality, that there's a specific portion of light that beings have, higher frequency beings have. And so as they're coming in, they're detected. It's almost like there's an alarm bell that goes off, because we're talking about, yeah. And so there's already a plan in place that is going to, and this may, I think, what we'll sort of speak about is the non-conventional. I mean, there's people who go through sexual abuse and, you know, trafficked through rings and things like that, which is mind-boggling. And a lot of it happens. I mean, for many years I worked in residential care, and what I witnessed through that and what happens in the systems, especially the government systems that are set up to protect children, is probably where a lot of it happens. But beyond that, it's the interdimensional, or more I don't know the word I'm trying to find, less known ways in which children do get targeted and have procedures done or tech in their body. This happens, I think, a lot more than anyone's prepared to talk about or acknowledge.
Yeah. And I think also, like you just said, access to children is unlimited. I mean, there's a pipeline of children. You know, we think this is just disadvantaged children. No, this is happening in your neighborhood right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you know what happens to your children when you drop them off at the childcare centre? And I'm not saying this to create paranoia, because the reality is mind control and sabotage can happen in the home through the tech devices that you've got switched on all the time, like, or just through the screens.
And also, if even beyond that, the abductions that happen from a young age,
Yeah.
that you know that you could have the safest home and the greatest upbringing, but
Yeah.
if you have been detected, there are ways and means
Mm.
that will come into play at some point. Yeah.
So that's a really good point, around the detection part, the detection of high frequency children. How does that happen through what you've seen?
Often it's like a resonance. It's almost like the best way I can describe it is Earth. There's a netting that is kind of just on the outer sphere, if you will. And it's like once a soul chooses to incarnate and pierces through that barrier, it's almost like there's like a detection that goes off, if you will. Um, and it's from that point that it is tracked. Um, Often what I see is it's implants tech that is then put into specific points within the body,
Mm.
especially in the lower back of the chakra,
Mm.
in the sacral chakra area is probably the most commonly because that distorts the creation,
Mm.
sexuality. But there's also a lot of tech that people have in their head. Like it's not limited to, but the most common place that I see this tech is in the back. A lot of the times it can come intergenerationally. I've seen that because it's like while I was going to say augmenting in the womb, while gestating in the womb, that then sort of it's almost as though there's situations that occur to the mother that then comes in. I've done a lot of work in probably the last 2 years of, when I first came into awareness of my own tech and dismantling that. And then once you see it everywhere. Like it's like one
Mm.
of the main things of when you start to expand in consciousness, then there's something that like switches you off or like creates a
Mm.
lot of disturbance. So once you start to rid yourself of some of that tech, and I also, yeah, sorry, one thing that's come to mind that I've seen is like it messes with women's menstrual cycles, their ability to reproduce or not reproduce. It's very much targeted in that creative center because I think that's the most powerful point we have as human beings. Um, but really distorting the sexuality has been a huge, huge one. And that comes in many facets. It can shut someone off completely. It can make someone hypersexual. Um,
Mm.
but also, I've seen how this happens through sexual abuse too, is that it creates a tear in the field that then allows entities to then work. And these are beings. Like this is not just like a entity attachment that you go into some dense place and they see a light ooh, and they attach to you. This is like inside that is very a lot harder to
Mhm.
extract.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I agree completely with everything you've just said. I've seen the same.
Mm.
Um, but there's something you said around, when people increase their consciousness, because that's actually a really good one to ask. What does that even mean? When someone expands their consciousness, the way I see it anyway, because I've seen people do this, you can expand the consciousness of your heart, but if your third eye is shut off, you're not going to see anymore.
Mm.
But yes, your heart develops, more intelligence, more magnetism, more sensitivity, all of these things. That's amazing. But if it's not connected to the sight,
Mm.
you're not
Mhm.
getting the whole picture, and vice versa.
Mhm.
People who are amazing seers and their heart's closed off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and equally again, like you said, the sacral. The sacral has to be connected to the heart. Otherwise, we're literally in a split and
Mhm.
we're functioning in duality, in separation. We'll never, ever ascend beyond that. So it does come down to the body. Expanding consciousness is great, but how are you doing that? Where are you at really with those three centers? And this is where the implants come in, what we've seen inside people. Because the sight has to come on at some point. I know so many body workers, healers, amazing therapists who are working on bodies and trying to heal bodies. And I'm like looking at them going, there's an implant in that person's knee. You're never going to fix their knee. There's a bit of chunk of metal in the way. But they're not, this hasn't switched on yet.
Yeah.
So they may have amazing abilities and skills in other areas, but until we see beyond this dimension of what we've been shown or the training we've had or whatever it is, where are we really at? And are we really healing people in the way that they need to be liberated now? So yeah, I've seen the same chunks and chunks and endless implants. I mean, I don't know how, I think I've removed, definitely hundreds of implants from myself in the last 5 years.
Mm.
And a lot of those times I've been in a lot of pain.
Mm. Yeah.
And as soon as the implant comes out, like it's instant pain relief. That is so telling. So how many people are on this healing like cycle and going to therapists and all these health services and everything. And literally it could be as simple as just pull that implant out. If more people could see, because they want to see, because this is the thing, once you see implants, right, you go, oh shit, that's linked to that being and that got put there in this timeline, and then it like just opens up this entire realm of other truths that you got to be prepared for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring that up because, yeah, you do have to have the sight to see. There's a couple of things that I see. Some people really come into their awakening or, want to activate the third eye. Like that's their primary, they just want to see.
Mm.
But are you prepared to see? And a lot of people that don't do the trauma work, they can open that up, but it's still through a distorted, murky lens because the channel is not clear. And there's a lot of filters of own distortion that then gets projected out, which can be sometimes a lot more harmful. Believe me, I started working in psychic development from the age of 17 years old. So I've seen the plethora of um, projection. Let's just say that. Um, so it really is about to, be able to be as clear channel as possible. The other thing I want to address is a lot of people talk about, the chakras being part of the sim, like the false matrix that they get. Yes, I do agree with that. But to have a functioning body in this 3D reality, the chakra system is a part of that until you evolve out of it. I believe that as we go through more and more activation, whatever expansion, the whole energy body is meant to collapse into one unified field. But if you're going in just to rip out chakras and collapse, and it's a process, you can't rush it. You don't want to be collapsing and going into one unified field if you've got all these implants and tech and distortion buried in some that was there to operate for a function, for a purpose through this experience. There are, and I don't know, I woke up thinking about that. I just, because I know that so many people watch certain people that talk about that, but don't have the experience. So they're actually doing more harm than good in that. Um, I mean, yeah. Sorry, I've gone off on some tangents here,
No,
but
every topic we talk about is so massive that it warrants its own video, so but it's all interwoven beautifully anyway. All these topics are so relevant because they all are part of the tapestry of what it means to ascend, which I hate that word because we're actually descending into the body. We're not going anywhere. The cosmos is not up there where we want to go. It's actually down, I believe, inside the earth, or all the evolved civilizations beneath our feet.
yeah, so
In human form anyway.
the activation of the light body that then switches on our gifts and abilities to come into, we'll talk about the golden bodies, is the clearing of each layer so that it can unify within oneself completely. And that is a process. Like, I taught a class about this that goes for 8 weeks, and we go in depth of how to go through. So when I first came into this experience and started downloading energy work modalities, that was the primary focus of the step by step how to do that. And I know many people that have achieved that. When you look at sort of Eastern philosophies and they talk about the rainbow body ascension, I believe that that's what they were doing. But we're in a compressed time frame now. We don't have 13 years to sit in a cave and have only pure thought. We're yeah, we're in a much more accelerated time than that. But one thing I do want to share, which I find really fascinating, is that I think in this period that we're in right now, there's exponential potential for people to see beyond the threshold of this just 3D reality. That's come through several sessions recently. And then I had someone contact me yesterday that had a dream that that's exactly what they were experiencing, that they could see beyond this, and start to interact with beings that other people couldn't see. And I think that's kind of where we're moving into, because to be able to dismantle some of this to clear, you need to be able to see and perceive what's going on in the subtler realms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, and titrating with the dark, like we said last time, the more you see and the more you experience the golden frequency and the more creation energy you have within you, the more dark you'll see. And the truth of your life will be revealed to you. And so when people are saying they're ascending or they're increasing their consciousness or light frequency, whatever, I just go, okay, so what about your 3D life is different? Does your body look different? What are you doing day to day? If someone made a movie about your life now versus before you increased your consciousness, what would they say factually about what's different about your life? Are you with the same people? Are you doing the same work? Are you working? Where do you live? Like, how are you living? What are you eating? What is your body shape like? Like all these factual things will tell us what's real. And I think this is so important now more than ever, is everything has to be tethered to the body. Otherwise, it hasn't happened. You can be off there in the realms and chatting to beings and thinking you're like having all these amazing experiences, whatever, but you got to inhabit your body at the end of the day and what's going on there. And so that's why I think it's so valuable to track your physicality over time. Take body photos, take face photos.
I was about to say, I was about to say, do you notice changes in people's physical bodies as they move through different phases of their own, let's say, just growth or elevation?
Absolutely. but it can happen way faster than people realize if the focus is on the body. So a lot of the time the focus is on the energy and the body is second, like, oh yeah, I've got to ground that. But actually, you know, I've been in, when I was doing my psychosomatics trainings years ago, we actually did before and after photos, and the difference in people's faces and their body, like, it was just extraordinary. You wouldn't believe it. And even one of my friends was watching this video who knows me from that time, and she's like, wow, your jawline has changed. It's really prominent. I didn't have a jawline back then when I did that training. And you can see the photos. And what does that even mean? The jawline is about how you ground information, how you ground things in reality. So back then I was this little sprite I used to get called, what did they call me in the training? Like a piece of spaghetti. Couldn't sit still, bouncing all over the place, just very light. There was very little density in my body. But now, if I look at all the photos, because this is my line of work, is analyzing bodies. So this is really important to me, and it's not just mine. I've seen it in so many bodies. Over time, if the focus is on grounding stuff and bringing everything through all of the energy centers and the body all through the channel, then you will see the physical impact of that. And you can create new bone. You can shape soft tissue, redistribute tissue. I've seen it so many times, and it seems miraculous, but it's really not. It just depends where your focus is.
Wow. I love that. The transformation of physicality is, yeah.
Evidence.
Yeah.
Evidence is what we need more than ever now. So when people say things to me, I say, what's the evidence of that? How's your knee going? Do you still need that knee replacement? People are just talking heads, especially with this Aquarian energy and all the light codes flying around. And, you know, it can be very enlivening in many ways and enticing to be pulled out of your body and not focus on what is here and now. And so I always ask for evidence. What's the evidence of that? So, of the change, I mean, because there's a lot of things that we don't have evidence for yet, like off-world trafficking, for example. We only have testimonies. Where's the evidence of that? You know, so, but right now, what is the evidence of the changes that you're referring to? How are you going to know that that has actually happened or changed in yourself, in your life? How are you going to know? Take a photo before and after, and then you'll know.
And even through the eyes too. I don't know about you, but you can see when people have done a certain level of clearing, you can see that in the eyes.
Absolutely, in the eyes. Yeah. The
Yeah.
eyes will be clearer, but and the face becomes more radiant because there's obviously more light coming through. But then, yeah, the real grounded changes come through the bone structure and the tissue formation, and also the quality of the tissue. So some people are going to have, you know, flesh that has very little consciousness in it, and it can be fat. It can be a lot of fat, or it can be very little tissue. It doesn't matter if it's fat or skinny. It's what is the consciousness and the quality of that tissue. Is your soul consciousness flowing through all of your tissue? We all have these energy blockages in the body, but do you know how to spot them?
Yeah.
Of course, the obvious way is through physical ailments and pain, but if you don't have that, can you still see where the energy needs to open up and flow more in different parts of your body? A lot of that is posture too. So yeah, that all of that stuff is so important now, I feel, to keep people in the matter. What matters.
I love that. I love that. So there's a couple of directions that we could go at this point. Is there anything that's really jumping out to you?
I think what is coming to me, because I think this warrants a landing point after our last video where we talked about the AI beings, and why this is relevant at this juncture of the conversation is because what we're essentially alluding to in this video is, where are you focusing your energy for creation? So, of course, there's a lot of bad shit out there happening, and these AI beings are not coming for good reasons. We know that, right? However, in every situation lies an opportunity. But are you going to be able to leverage that opportunity if A, you don't want to see the truth? Don't even want to focus on them, because, if you focus on that happening, then it might get bigger. It might come into your reality. It's happening anyway. We're using AI technology right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already here, number one. But secondly, you don't have to focus on changing them. Let them do their own agenda, but use that as motivation, if you like, or context as well, for what pathway you're going to create. And I mean co-create. You're not going to create your own pathway. Nobody is going to move forward now without co-creation. Everything is becoming a fusion of different humans coming together to co-create. So what are you co-creating as an alternative to whatever shit is happening out there, whatever's coming, because there's big shit coming that the mind can't conceive. There's also big shit happening and has been happening forever that the mind can't conceive, right? Rather than putting our precious energy into changing them and what they're doing, and I'll changing the course there, just go, okay, in parallel to that, let's strengthen our pathway. That's why we talked about the golden timeline that we're threading right now. Let's put our energy into that. And it's not utopia. We're not aiming for utopia here. There's utopia and dystopia happening concurrently. That's real. Let's stay neutral in the middle and get on with it. So if those beings come into our field and are a problem, which, we are going to be confronted, because that's how we will rise into and remember our superpowers and what we're truly capable of, and really start to see, is if they come into our reality, our field, whatever, we know how to respond. We learn how to respond. We learn from what happens and trusting that. So I think it's just so important for people to focus on what is the new pathway, and really put your energy into that. And there's people in different camps. There's ones that are fighting the new, the agendas, and then there's people who are doing nothing in the middle, or doing a lot of talking or listening and not actually putting their bodies on the line, taking risks, acts of courage to make the new come about. And there is no doubt, to do that we are going to have to take acts of courage, which are going to be terrifying to what we've known and who we think we are or have been.
Every step out into, I can speak from my own personal experience, every act of stepping out in alignment with my path was like the most terrifying experience, but you get used to it. I don't know. You get but it's hard, because I think whatever is laid dormant within the soul's experience from previously doing the work of whatever that is comes rattling up through, or or the counterbalance of the tech. There's different, but I feel like that process is so important, because it refines our frequency to a level of purity that it didn't have prior. And I always say that when you're creating something, it is an extension of your own frequency. So if you're a clear channel, and whatever you're creating is going to be filled with those light codes, that essence, that energy, that if you're not in a clear space, then you're just replicating, and it's funny what came across my path yesterday, and I was like, oh wow, because I love to work with creative people. That's sort of my jam. and helping them sort of actualize, what it is that they, their biggest desire to create. So, artists, musicians,
Mm.
creators of all types. Um, and I know that them actualizing that brings a frequency into the world that can be shared, that can be worked with. Anyway, I came across there's now AI apps that can run your own voice and create music. And I was like,
Mm.
so, like those that have wanted to pursue a career in music, I just need an app now and I can just run and but no, there's no depth to frequency in that. And I think because we're moving into an age of frequency, you can feel that. Is it
Yeah.
are you listening to something that is like vibrating through your body and like you've got like chills and ripples going through you, or you just listen to something going, oh, oh. And I think that in the co-creational space of whatever is being put forth to create has to have that ripple, has to have that power and potency. And that's in essence how we change the world. One way, anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up because some of the feedback I got on the last video, I think it was, oh, I loved it when you talked about fire. Can you talk more about firing up? Awesome. And you just touched on it. Creativity and courage. The two go together, and that's the expression of fire.
Mm,
And so what fuels courage is co-rage. You got to work with what makes you angry or what fires you up and brings you passion. It's that grinding of love and hate. These are the intense emotions that people are resistant to feeling because we've all gone to sleep, we've all gone cold. This is what AI is going to push people into. Just go more cold and more asleep, and everything will be easier and more convenient. That's what they will sell us.
mm,
The
mm,
antidote to all of this: fire up, get creative, take courageous risks, and you'll be fine
mm,
because you're then expressing the physical 3D manifestation of your soul spark or your original
mm,
energy
mm.
from that other higher place. It's got to come into the 3D. So that's why the physicality of the body is everything. And live performing and creative expression is going to take off because people are going to crave something that is not AI generated. Videos, images, art, music now online, people are just like, well, we don't know what's real anymore. The only way you're going to know what's real is if you see the person standing in front of you and they're singing to you.
Mm, mm. For sure. Yeah, for sure. Oh,
Where should we take it next, guys? All the people out there listening?
passion to purpose, everything of meaningful creation has come through an absolute destructive phase in my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, a lot of drama and destruction. Hmm.
But yeah, it does need that fiery element to get, whatever it is. And that's where I think it would be nice to see a switch or a change up where there are so many. I think one of the first stages of awakening is getting really super angry at all the shitty things that have been kept in hiding. But it would be nice to see the shift of utilizing that anger and rage to create something of benefit. And I think like that's always been my thing of like, okay, well, okay, that's not right, but what's the remedy? What
Yeah.
is,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think it's good because I do believe that we are stepping into an age now where that is much more welcomed. Where I think for me, and probably a lot of people resonate with this, is like I feel like I've always been a bit ahead of my time. Like, 2010, I was getting really angry about the blood diamond trade in Africa and how I wanted to take down, go to Africa and just take it all down. And it's like, well, can't do that.
Mm.
What can I do? And that was like, well, create something different, create different,
Oh,
you know.
Yeah.
That was sort of the beginning of one of the first businesses that, was like creating or acquiring jewelry that had an energetic purpose and value and symbolism that was created from small communities,
Mm.
and then infuse that around the world. And I think we're moving into a time now where those concepts can be much more understood, because this thing that keeps coming through is we're in the age of frequency and vibration.
And the dark is being seen more. Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I find that people struggle with when they get really angry about what's happening in the world, a lot of energy goes into things like trafficking, for example, or pedophilia. And I'm like, if and I go, if you say that to people, what you just brought up is, well, what's the remedy? What are you going to create from that energy of rage? Um, that falls on deaf ears when it's not personal enough. And
Mm,
that's what I always end up saying to people. I'm like, how is this happening in your home,
mm,
in your family, in your community, the people that you love? No one else. Forget about the whole world for a moment.
mm,
What is super personal to the bone for you is what you're here to change and create. And that's why I get so fired up about the children, because that's what was done to me. It has to be personal. It cannot be that removed, something happening on the other side of the world that you have no connection to, or, of course, there's injustices everywhere. But
mm,
if everyone just addressed what was so personal to them, that's where the greatest amount of power is. So even if it's in the reconstruction of your family, your own family's belief system, you change that. If everyone did that, we'd live in a different place.
mm.
So it's like people are afraid to make it personal because it's so fucking confronting to look at your family members, to look at your partner, to look at your kids, even to look at your closest friends, your longest friends. We brought this up last time as well. It's like, who's the being behind the body?
Mm.
And this is, again, the third eye sight thing. Like, if we don't want to see the being behind the body, we haven't got the whole picture. All humans look like humans, but they're not.
Mm.
That's a danger zone if you think that.
I think it's good to bring that up, because if you're sensitive enough to know when someone's being inhabited by a different being,
Mm,
you know,
mm, yeah.
even if you can't see, there's a shift in vibration.
Yeah, I reckon.
There
Yeah.
is a shift in the eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I've just had so many encounters and that's where I feel, from my vantage point, you learn to not hold it against the person itself.
Bingo. And that's where the heart comes in. If the third eye and what you see isn't connected to the heart, because in the heart we are all one, no matter what fractal of light being you are, or dark being. But it's about discernment at the end of the day. Where do you want to focus your energy? Do you want to focus your energy and time and love into a being like that, or not? And these are the hard choices that people are having to make. And so, yeah, I think that's where the third eye really does have to be anchored solidly in the heart. And I've made many, many mistakes and fuck ups myself, because my third eye has seen stuff and I've just been blown out by it and not known how to handle it or ground it or make sense of it. And like looking around at people around me going, can't you see this? And like freaking out because no one else is seeing it. And I'm going, I don't know what to do with this, and going to panic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really tough when the third eye does switch on, and you don't want it to switch on too suddenly for that reason.
Confronting. It's, yeah. It's confronting, and it shows you so much that potentially there isn't context for.
Yeah, and it's not just confronting because you might be seeing something you've never seen before, or it might be scary. It's mostly confronting because often you're left with a choice to make,
Mm.
a hard choice to make. Now that I've seen this, I can't unsee it. So what am I going to do differently? You can't just go along as normal.
Mm.
There's always going to be some alternative course of action of some sort, you know? That's the tough part.
Yeah, very much so.
So I love talking to you, A'Alisha, because you're not afraid to see anything and we can just calibrate it together and figure shit out and see different things and weave it all, you know. So when you're not afraid to see, it's a really like that's when the magic opens and so much becomes possible and we really do rise into our power. And I think that's a calling and it's ongoing, you know, for all of us.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think uh, this thing comes to me. Thank you for saying that. Once you get a bit more adjusted into viewing and seeing if that is something that is on the horizon for more people, once you do, it's almost like a no matter what form or whatever comes through, move aside from the confronting part and embrace it with a level of curiosity to learn from.
Mm.
Is always is how I've sort of come into working with, I don't talk about this, I don't advertise it, but for years, working in the dark to clear out, different types of beings from people's fields and attachments. And it's incredible how someone can go from completely depressed to suicidal to back to themselves just after, it's amazing how much beings can manipulate people's thoughts and minds and whatnot. But
Yeah.
ultimately recognizing that if you do have an attachment or a being that is coming into your field or attached to you in some way, the only leverage or entry point that they have is through a traumatic event or trauma that hasn't been looked at, recognized, or healed. That is the weakness or the entry point. So you can also like go through many clearings, but if you're not prepared to recognize whatever it is that's allowing that to come into your experience, you're just going to keep cycling through.
Mm.
Pull one out, another one will come in of equal capacity. So it's really about getting down to the core of like, so I got into this process. There's a process that I teach the practitioner in the practitioner training, but it's like really like sitting with that being and asking a series of questions like an interrogation so that you can deal with um, the core wounding, I guess, the core reason for the experience and the being of it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mm.
here we are going into now we've once again, I think we've just like touched on so many different topics and not really delved into it, but we will be continuing this series. We've still got some more content to move through. So thank you so much, A'HaRa, for being here and being so open about your own personal experience. I know we just dived into it just a tiny bit, but perhaps if you feel open to sharing more about that, I think that that could really enrich people's understanding of your perspective and where you come from, and open up a conversation that needs to be had so that other people, I think, as we move through this jump, the potential of people really coming in to recognize or remember who they are comes with all the unseen childhood experiences that perhaps have been hidden. So quite topical. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who's joining and following the ride. We'd love to hear your feedback or comments or anything that you wish to share that we can potentially bring in or weave into the conversation as well. in the
Mm.
comment section. So thank you, and until the next episode, get
Yeah.
in the body, keep clearing, work with your co-creation and what you want to do. In
Yeah.
essence, in a nutshell.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Alicia. Bye.